Well, today, Robin and I are here.
Yay.
We're excited to chat with you about something health related, which I'm excited about. I was actually thinking about that. We should talk about some health stuff because I feel like it's been a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talked about parasites at the beginning of the year. Very exciting material, but necessary.
Yep.
Necessary, you know, and I think that the Lord is just putting this on our heart for a reason of just like he wants us to be well and to feel well.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to do his work when we are equipped and have a good working body, you know. So today,
yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, that we need to camp on that for a minute because I think so many people don't connect the dots that, you know, I'm not maybe carrying out the will and purpose and plan of my life because I am sick or because I'm trapped in anxiety, or, you know, if we're not well in our mind, our emotions, and our physical body, we are literally paralyzed and not doing what God has built us to do. And so people might think that talking about our physical health is not, quote, spiritual. But we are a triune being, just like we serve a triune God, and he cares about all of it. And for us to really be effectual in the earth, we have to take care of every part of us. And they're so connected. And people take that for granted, and they kind of just focus on one aspect of themselves, I feel like, at a time. And we can't silo. We have to like look at us as a whole and make sure we're taking care of the whole. And we need to steward what we've been given. And that means our body too, the temple that we live in.
Yeah. So today we're going to dive into mold and how that can affect you and symptoms that you can have from that. It's kind of something that I don't think a lot of people talk about enough, but there's a lot of, you know, issues with that if you've been exposed to black mold, you know, sometimes people have it in their houses. They might not even realize it. I know you've even had patients in the past that had exposure to mold and they didn't even realize it, and they were having all these symptoms. And then, you know, you found out like, whoa, your mold is out of control. You know? And so I think the cool thing about talking about this is maybe someone's going to hear, you know, this episode and be like, oh my goodness, I have some of those, you know, symptoms, and maybe that's what I'm dealing with. And then they can get tested and look into that, because I do believe that, you know, God, he gives us like resources, and, you know, we're not supposed to try to figure any of this health related stuff out on our own. And I've been realizing like lately when I go through something to just talk to the Lord about it and be like, Lord, like, can you help me? Like, I'm dealing with this symptom. Like, what should I do? You know, and instead of just kind of like freaking out in our minds and just being like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? You know, just ask him, you know, and he will give you the resources. So I think with this, you know, like with mold too, it's just like, ask the Lord. Just be like, is this something that you are saying like, hey, I need to get this checked out? Because maybe someone listening does need to do that. So,
I think one, it's not talked about because it's not really taught in medical school. Like I didn't know anything about mold. I felt totally ill-equipped. And when I left my traditional practice and went into functional, that was one of the things that I learned very quickly was that one, there's a lot of mold illness, and I don't know anything
probably because there's
about
not a prescription drug for it. Well, you know, part of me just like wonders that, you know.
Well, it's interesting, and what is also interesting is just to learn that governments are doing a lot of research looking into using mold as a weapon. As mold toxins are insanely harmful, and you can cause a lot of damage, and they're not detectable to the human eye. And so they are doing research looking at that, using it as a bioweapon. And so for me, when I went into practice at Sparrow, quickly, a lot of people who have weird symptoms and are really sick, a lot of times there is mold involved. And so I had to learn a lot about it in a short amount of time. And was very grateful that I had Christy.
And it causes exhaustion, I think, is one of the things that it can cause.
But even autoimmunity. So we had mentioned that probably in the parasite talk, that when I see someone with an autoimmune condition, I have kind of this checklist I'm going through in my mind. Parasites on the top of the list. Next is mold. And so I've got patients I can think of right now that like lupus, lupus, or diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I have a patient I remember early on when I got started who she's describing this story to me of she could remember the week and the month and the year that suddenly she developed joints swelling up in her hands. She could barely use her hands. She had gone to see all these docs, seen a rheumatologist, and they told her that she had rheumatoid arthritis, but they call it seronegative rheumatoid arthritis, meaning it doesn't show up in your blood work as classic rheumatoid arthritis, but that's what it looks like. And it's your immune system attacking your joints. And so they wanted to put her on very strong biologic immune suppressive medications. And she wanted to know, is there something else I can do? So I'm going through her timeline, which is what I do with my patients. I figure out, okay, what was going on before leading up to that? What was going on in your life? All the way up until that point. And so she knew exactly when it had happened. And she's describing what was happening the day before. She was out in her barn and she was scrubbing black mold off of the walls. Wow. And like alarm bells went off in my mind. She thought it's no big deal, but I'm like, I think you have mold toxin illness. And so we went through a journey with her of still addressing her gut. That's where 75% of our immune system is. It's an immune problem. So we looked at her gut. I made her get off dairy and gluten. And then we started looking at mold, and her mold toxin levels were extremely high. And so when we went through that journey, she realized, yes, dairy and gluten were huge triggers for her. Okay. But it was the mold toxin that tipped her over. Wow. Right. So she likely had these sensitivities, but as soon as that toxic burden hit her, all of a sudden it's like, it just tipped her over. And a lot of times I see that in histories of people. It's like, there's some kind of event. Things were going on behind the scenes before that. She likely had a leaky gut long before that. But then this was the final insult that tipped her over. And so we were able to get her to a point where she did not need to go on any drugs. Wow. And she was back to being able to do all the things that she loved to do before, and her joints back to normal. Wow. But we had to address the root cause, but the mold was the big trigger. And so helping her detox that out of her body. I have another gal.
Really quick, when you detox someone off, is it a painful experience sometimes as you're getting that out? I know when I've done yeast cleanses in the past, like sometimes I'll get like more pain for a while. It's temporary, but for me it feels like amp up sometimes when I'm going through that detox. Is that kind of normal for people? Yeah, and every patient's so different. And so you can't treat them all the same. Yeah. Some people are extremely sensitive, and some of my mold sick people are some of the most sensitive people that I have. And so, yes, when you start trying to move mold toxin out of the body, anytime you're moving that around, you can feel worse in the beginning, and then it starts to get better. But I usually will use things to try to help mitigate that as much as possible, and I'll usually start low and slow and build my way up. That's smart. That's really smart. So that they'll tolerate it better. Yeah. Because I know like sometimes you feel like just giving up in the middle of a cleanse, because it's just like, oh my gosh, you feel so sick. Like sicker. It's like, how could I feel sicker? You know? Huh. And that's where it's nice to have somebody help walk you through this, because I'm telling my patients like, okay, this is how we're going to go, but
reach out to me. If this is really hard, like we can recalibrate and we can go slower if we need to. Like, and there's other things we can add because there's hiccups that can happen. And so we need to help you along. And it, depending on how sick the person is and how high their mold toxin levels are, and if they're able to get out of that environment right away, this can be like a year, sometimes longer process for us to get normal labs back.
Wow.
And a lot of times they're feeling better sooner than that. But I was thinking of another patient of mine who we were doing a lot of work with her for quite a while. And we were making progress, but just not. She was diagnosed with lupus and had all these different things, even diabetes, all these different things going on. Wow. And so all these symptoms she'd bring up, I'm like, oh, it just sounds like mold to me. And she's like, we have a brand new house. We have, there's just all the reasons why you'd go, well, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I had her do a vision test. There's a vision test you can do called a visual contrast sensitivity test, VCS. Oh, okay. And you can do it online. Famous docs, Monique's going to give it right now. One of the famous docs in the mold world actually discovered that people who have a high biotoxin level, whether that's from Lyme or mold, they have a hard time distinguishing different shades of gray from each other. And so this was it's a nice screening tool. So if people score high on it, then I'll say, okay, if you score high, then it's worth us looking for mold. I'll send it to you.
I'm pulling out my computer right now. I'm like, I want to know right now.
So it's helpful because if people pass it with flying colors, then I think, okay, we probably don't need to go further. Yeah. But if they flunk it, then it's like, you know what, we should really look. And so she flunked it. Then I was like, okay, I think we should look. And her mold toxin levels were really high. And even though for her, it was like, we literally just built this home. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But she was like, okay. So we started going through the process of helping get those mold levels down. And she was doing a lot better. And then she came back at one visit and she said, I found the mold. And she said, my husband has thought that I've been crazy this whole time. But she was going through her clothes. She was getting ready to go on a cruise. And she was going through her dresses that she doesn't wear, and they had black mold in them. And she realized that when they were in the middle of the move, she had stored a bunch of her stuff up in an old garage, like attic, and it was hot and moist. And so the clothes had gotten mold in them, and then they just moved them right into the new house. Yeah. So she's dealing with these clothes and like trying to get them outside and just get them out. Oh, yeah. In the meantime, within 24 hours, she had a flare of all of her symptoms. And so that was like confirmation that like, yep, this is related to mold toxin illness. And her husband was like, okay, you're not a crazy person. Yeah. And so they got rid of all those clothes and went about trying to take care of that situation. But it's like, I just tell that to people because I hear these symptoms as people see me, and I now have seen so many mold sick people that I'm like, this sounds like mold. And they'll be like, really, there's no place it could be. And I'm like, let's just test, because even people have new homes. I have another patient who was building a new home. She's had mold sickness and something went wrong with the piping or whatever. And all of a sudden they find that there is water damage issue, and so unless you're kind of sensitive and aware of these things, you just don't think to look for it.
Yeah. And you have to be so careful. I remember we bought a used pack and play just to have as an extra one when River was a baby. Yeah. And I wanted to like clean this out and soak it. And so I remember I washed it in our bathtub and I put probably detergent. I did whatever they said do online. Yeah. But I did not ventilate it properly, and I did not put it out to dry. I think it was in the winter too, so it was hard, right? To get this thing fully clean and then dry it out, because you can't just take it outside and dry it. And then anyway, we kind of like stored it away. I thought it was dry enough and it wasn't. And so then the whole thing was like full of black mold. So we had to buy a brand new one, and then it was, you know, pretty expensive. But, you know, so here I'm trying to like clean it and make sure it's like fully sanitized, and then I, you know, make this horrible health issue like with mold instead. Yeah. And so, yeah, we just had to toss it, unfortunately. But you do have to be really careful. Like black mold is like, it's easy to create. Yes. You know, and it is. It's just a little bit of moisture on something, and something that doesn't get properly cleaned out. We had one of those like blow up like swimming things, you know, like with the slide and stuff. We had that for river. Yeah. You know, it's so hard to get that completely dry. And then you know, package it all up, put it in that little bag and put it in your shed. Yeah. Same thing happened. You know, you pull it out the next time you use it, it's like, that thing is full of black mold. Yes. You know, and so it's just like, it's innocent little things that can create it. And unfortunately, it's not hard to make.
That, and I think you did the right thing by throwing away that pack and play, because I know a lot of people would be like, let's just try to clean the heck out of this. And mold is really hard to deal with, one, and you can get really sick in the meantime.
Your baby next to that,
yes, you know? Right. I know. No, but some people would. But it's hard. You can get really sick just working hard to try to clean all that up, like the gal who was cleaning her barn, and that's when she got so ill. And it's not something to play around with at all. And there are professionals out there who will do mold remediation, and I tell my mold sick patients, please just don't be the person who's going down there trying to clean it. You're the last person who should be doing that. But I think just some of the symptoms I think would be helpful to share.
Yeah, I agree.
What's interesting is different mold toxins affect different organ systems. Some of the bad ones will impact every single organ system, and some of them are only some. But a real common one that I'll hear from people is like brain fog and fatigue, getting sick often. One that's like classic though, that doesn't really happen with other things, is this like strange vibration feeling.
I get that.
Yes.
That's crazy.
It's a vibration feeling inside. Yes. And I
get it when I touch other people, usually. Like I'll feel this vibration.
Well, this is like, I'm not touching anything. And a lot of people will describe it even at night, where their body is vibrating on the inside, but they're not moving. But they feel it throughout their body, their whole this vibration, and I'll hear it again and again and again. And so that one, when I hear that, that's usually a red flag for mold. Not a lot of other things will cause that. It can cause anxiety. It can cause...
She looked right at me, folks.
Autonomic dysregulation. Rashes, yep. It can activate the mast cells big time, and that's what releases histamine. So a lot of the histamine kind of patients, or they're getting hives or itchy all over, that kind of thing, reacting to everything, that can very much be a mold issue. And there's another interesting one. There's one mold in particular that can impact the uterus, and can even impact, because it has like an estrogen. It kind of mimics estrogen. And so it can cause heavy menstrual bleeding and other issues like that. But muscle pain, joint pain, it's just lots of symptoms, and neurologic stuff that just seems really weird. So
it sounds like a very complex thing. It can, and kind of like Lyme disease, where it has just like a lot of symptoms, a lot of like crazy things, and you feel like your body is just being attacked from the inside.
Yes, literally. And people will say like, I sound like a crazy person, but it's not. It's just they're struggling with mold illness. I think people even with severe chronic fatigue, unable to get out of bed, like they do any kind of exertion at all, and then they're just wiped out, and they like need to recover for a day or days before they're able to function again. And they're always having to watch how much exertion they're using, because they can only exert so much, and then they're just completely wiped out.
Wow.
And so lots of those kinds of symptoms. And the other thing is chronic sinus issues, because people can be in a mold environment and be struggling with with getting the mold toxins out of their body. But if you're in it long enough, you can actually become colonized, where the mold lives inside of you. So your sinuses and your gut can become colonized with it. And now it's actually making mold toxins in your body. And so when I am seeing someone and I'm trying to figure out, okay, is there mold illness? First thing I do is, or do they have high levels in their body? And that's usually either a blood test or a urine test we can do. And that's not through a traditional clinic. Like I can't order it from Quest or, another, clinic that people would not be aware of. They don't have that ability. So we have to send these out to a special lab. And so we can see what toxins are there that the body is processing. Once I see that those are high, the next step is to figure out, okay, are they colonized? And we'll usually do a nasal swab. Okay. And we send that to a place that will actually grow it long enough, because mold and fungus takes a really long time to grow. So they'll see does it grow out mold for us or not. Wow. There's also a bacteria that tends to live in my mold sick patients, and it creates a lot of inflammation in the body. It's abbreviated MARCONS. And so I'll check for that. So we check for mold and MARCONS to see if they're there, and we have to treat the sinuses if they're there, if they're going to get better. So we'll do that. And then I do a different urine test called an organic acids test to see, is there breakdown products from mold living in the body that would only be there if it was in the body. So then I can treat them with antifungals if I need to.
But it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Like just the science of, how people came up with these tests, and to be able to like identify these things in our bodies. It's just like, if you think about it for a second, it's just like incredible. Yeah. Really that people can, come up with these tests and find this and to help people,
What's amazing to me more is that the cell exists, and that there's a lot of people struggling with mold related illness, and I didn't know anything about it when I was in traditional medicine. And they'll look at you like you are nuts if you go in there and ask for a test or say, I think I'm struggling with mold illness. There's like no idea what to do with you. Yeah. So that's, to me, like amazing.
I think I read an article. It was either like in a magazine or maybe it was just like an internet article, and it was like probably 8 years ago. I was on vacation when I read it, and it was about a lady who was significantly struggling with mold in that area. I think it was in her car. And so it was like in the vents in the car. Yeah. And so like when she would turn on the car, like all of a sudden this would come about, and she'd feel really sick. Yes. And she just like couldn't figure it out. And it was like, what in the world is going on? Yeah. So it made me a little bit more aware of, fans in the vehicle and like those filters and all of that, and just like the importance of keeping those clean. Yes. I think that's an important thing. Like, I think, people think they're getting scammed or whatever at the dealership when they're like, get a new cabin air filter. It's like, those things are nasty. Yes. They're full of stuff. And, in this poor lady's case, I mean, it was like really toxic, and she's getting all this like mold exposure, and they could not figure it out for the longest time. And then finally just made that connection, like, oh, it's only happening in the car. Yes. And they were able to identify that.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. But you bring up a good point about air and how important it is for us to be having our air ducts cleaned. Yes. And changing our filters. Yes. And so it's a big thing when I identify that with someone, is when they are trying to figure out where in the house it is, if it is in their house. Sometimes it's their place of employment. Sometimes it's their school. Like, there's just different places they have to start playing detective and figuring out, okay, where is this coming from? And then, if they have their house remediated, then they follow up with cleaning their air ducts and having all of that taken care of and getting proper air filtration going in their house to get rid of that. The other crazy thing that's so hard is everybody has a different ability to deal with toxins. So people detox differently. So I can have a husband and wife, and the husband might be really sick. They live in the same house, and yet she's okay and he is not. Yeah. And so then you think, well, it can't be the house, but we are all just that different. Yeah. We handle environments different. And so literally you can have somebody who's doing just fine. Like, and I tell people it's kind of like a rain barrel analogy, where some people have multiple spigots at the bottom of their rain barrel. And so if they may have lots of rain, which I think the rain is like toxins coming in, you may have a high amount, but you do well with it because you can get it all out. So it never overflows. Or you have another person who has maybe one and it's kind of rickety and doesn't work very well. And those are the poor detoxers. And so it doesn't take as much for their rain barrel to be overflowing. And then they are sick. And so when we detox people, literally what we're thinking about is how can we open up all of the body's natural detox pathways to help get the toxic burden down. And how can we work in their environment, but then how can we work with their body to bring that level down? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wanted to say, as you were talking, I just thought of another area that people can look for black mold too. Toothbrushes.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to see Dr. Ben, who was practitioner in La Crosse. I've talked about him a few times on various episodes, but I was intrigued because when he did his testing on me, it came back with a bunch of stuff. And out of curiosity, I was like, oh, I would really like Gary to be tested, because I kind of was like, is this guy just like pulling my chain and saying I have all this stuff because he's trying to like suck a bunch of money out of me, you know? And for Gary, you know, he tested him. He's like, oh, I see like black mold in your system. And that was the only thing that he found was black mold. And we kind of thought like, well, maybe it's our shower, you know, something like that. I thought I had seen some in our shower at our old house. And, you know, Gary ended up taking off the head of his toothbrush and he realized it was full of black mold. Yeah. And so it's just so interesting. It can hide in your toothbrush and then you're ingesting it every single day. Yeah. So it's just another area, you know, make sure you're changing your heads of your electric toothbrushes, because that's super important. And, you know, obviously, like I mentioned, showers are a great place to unfortunately encounter black mold. My husband and I, we have a whole bathroom remodel that we're going to be having to do in the near future because they didn't seal our shower properly. And so unfortunately a lot of water went underneath the tiles and went into the tiles of the floor of the bathroom. So not just in the shower tiles, but in the entirety of the tiles of our shower and our bathroom. And so in the near future, we're going to be having to take on this large project to get rid of all that black mold. And so just making sure, like if you're building a new house or if you just purchased a home, making sure that it's sealed up properly, you know, checking those things, because if we had maybe seen that like 6 years ago and we're like, hey, let's, you know, get this before it becomes more of an issue and we can actually take care of the shower and sealing that properly. And then now it's like a very large financial project. So just, you know, kind of being mindful of that. I've had other friends who recently bought a house. The reason they left their old house was due to mold, and they just couldn't do that whole project of the bathroom themselves. And there were some other, you know, factors too, but anyway, it's very common. And I don't know if people realize just how common mold can be.
And how important it is to be thinking about that when you're looking at buying a new home, because people get in that. And then not everybody discloses that that's a major issue. No,
and remember it was in our camper too, you know, because
I was thinking about that later. You literally had mushrooms growing in it. And I think back and I'm like, dear Lord, you had such a mold toxin exposure being in that camper. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I know. I was thinking about it too earlier, but yeah, Robin and I, we have campers up north and we had bought one. It'll be 7 years up there this summer. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So this is our 7th year up there, but year 2, when we had gone to our camper that we had purchased, yes, we had like mushrooms growing in the seams. And I'm like, that's enough of that. And I immediately got a new camper, like literally 3 weeks later. I'm like, we're buying a new one right now, because I hate that kind of stuff. Like I'm just like very like conscientious and like any
knowing what I know now, I would have been freaking out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like,
oh my gosh. I was already. I already knew to freak out. I have a appropriate response of freak out to that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
See, I know. See, the hypo in me, it knows.
But when we were just talking before too, because Monique was saying like, okay, I'm a little nervous about when they're going to be busting all this stuff open and doing this remodel for us. And my advice was, if you can escape up to the camper while they're doing the majority of this work, that will be the safest for you guys, because there's going to be a lot of toxin release into the air when that's happening.
Yeah.
And
I'm like thinking do I clear out my entire closet of clothes that are in there?
Yeah.
Like, do I just literally take everything out of my entire bedroom? I mean, they're going to look at me and they're like, oh, this woman's nuts.
It doesn't really matter.
Put up a
Honestly, I probably would, if I had the ability to do that, to move everything at least into a separate area, like a different bedroom or something, while they're doing all that work, because your closet's like connected to your bathroom. I would probably do that, because mold toxin spores just get into everything, and it's so hard. You can't just wash them out. So that would be my suggestion, is if you guys can get out, to do that, have the air purifiers going, and then kind of come back when it's safer. And that would be ideal. But it's a real thing.
Right.
And so
sure is.
So if people are, like, you feel like the crazy person and nobody believes you, you've gone to doctors and they can't figure it out, or you had a real sudden onset of illness, maybe autoimmunity or other things, I'd say, well, you might want to see a provider, maybe in the functional space, who is familiar with mold and can help test and treat and help you get better. So that's what we do better than most. I bet there's people out there who are wondering, like, how can I start detoxing? Like, are there things I can do to start help getting my mold toxin level down? And there's, common things that I tell almost everybody, and that will bind and help pull out almost every mold toxin. One is charcoal. So charcoal and clay, especially bentonite clay. The other is chlorella. So I'll use those to help like clear mold toxins out of the system. Again, you have to just go slow, especially because if you don't know how you're going to react, moving mold around and pulling it out of the system. Some people do better with that than others. But for the charcoal and clay and chlorella, you can actually take those together, but you want to take it away from food, away from other supplements, because it will work like a binder. We call them binders because they will actually hold on to the mold toxin and help flush it out of the system. And so you don't want it to bind onto other supplements you're taking, or you hold onto your food and then you don't absorb your food nutrients. So you have to take them on an empty stomach, away from other things, by at least an hour.
Okay.
So those are some basic things, but also what's really important is to make sure you're getting a really good quality brand, especially with charcoal, because you want it to be pure, because it literally holds on to anything, right? So you can carry a lot of other things with it if they don't purify it. Okay. Because it is like a sponge. So those are things that easy to do. What you have to know too about charcoal is it can be constipating. And the last thing I want a toxic person to be is constipated. You are not detoxing well if you're constipated by definition. So the ways we get toxins out are sweat. So saunas are amazing too. So lots of health benefits to sauna, and that's a nice gentle way to detox. So I tell people you can be in the sauna, get a really good sweat going, and then jump in the shower and wash those toxins away. That's a nice way to do it. Through our urine and through our stool. Those are the biggest ways we get rid of toxins. So if you are not pooping well, you by definition are not a good detoxer. So I always make sure that if we're doing charcoal and clay, that people are pooping well. And sometimes we need to add things like magnesium citrate, vitamin C, other things to make sure that they're still going. But those are some of the common things that we'll use, and just common pitfalls you can have too. But at least if you're out there and you're worried, that's where I'd get you started.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. And I'll just pray over anyone who is maybe dealing with this or knows somebody. So, well, Father God, I thank you, Lord Jesus, for just the knowledge that Robin has in this area and what she's learned. And I thank you, God, that it helps many, many people, Lord. I pray that people, as they listen today, that's something, if it's stuck out to them, that they need to get tested, Lord Jesus. I pray that you would just open up the doors for them to do that. I pray that you'd provide the finances that they need to be able to get treatment. And I pray that, that this would just get sent to somebody who really might need this information, that could be a blessing to someone, in Jesus' name. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, make sure you share it with your friends, and also subscribe so when we do release a new episode, you will be the first to know it.
And please be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook. We also have a new Facebook group where you guys can come in and dive into conversation with us, ask us questions. So we would love to see you there as well.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you there.